Hello my treasures, it's time for a different type of Hearthstone video than I usually do. You would think because of what the image is behind me, it's going to be about Battlegrounds, but no, it's going to be about a dual type minions that were added to most of Hearthstone's game modes except for one that it would have made the most sense to add it to, Mercenaries. And while Mercenaries isn't the most played game mode as it currently stands, there honestly isn't really a reason to not include a dual type minions within Mercenaries. We'll be going over 4 reasons why I would want to do this. First one will be readability, consistency, buffs to certain mercenaries, and Longshots/hopes, which could also be categorized as buffs, but I really figured those one will probably not happen. So let's begin with readability of certain mercenaries. The ones in question are going to be the explorers, which if you are a new player to mercenaries, you're not going to really know who the explorers are unless you have a little bit of a background in Hearthstone itself. These 4 characters being Bran, Elise, Reno, and Sir Finley. Now, nowhere on these cards normally do they read Explorer, except where they have a equipment to buff up all the other Explorers in some way after using some skill. Now, if we added the Explorer tag to all of these individual mercenaries, it would be a lot more readable for a newer player to get into the game mode, and you could easily expand the Explorers outside of these 4 characters without the player requiring some background knowledge to know what characters are part of the League of Explorers and which ones they aren't. This also could be used for future mercenaries that might be part of something like the League of Evil or any other group that you might want to add into the future. This also does bring up a point of one of the other types of mercenaries that we currently do have that would help with some of the consistency factor across the different game modes. Probably one of the biggest groups of mercenaries that we actually have in the game mode is pirates. Pirates as individual mercenaries suffer from the fact that they only have one tag and thus may confuse new players with whatever race that they actually are a part of, because they will not also get the benefits of whatever other synergy that they might normally get if they didn't have the pirate tag on them. Mr. Smite, Sneed, and Eudora aren't 3 of the mercenaries that are most affected by this, but this would also help future-proof all 3 of these mercenaries in case they wanted to add additional Taurens, Goblins, or Volpera to the game mode. And while these ones aren't impacted that much, things like Cookie would be impacted a little bit, where he would heal himself up by 20 instead of 10, which I don't think will break Mercenaries as a game mode. But you get into some really interesting situations when you think of things like Edwin and Vanessa, if they added a human tag to them. And you might be thinking, what mercenaries would actually benefit if you did give them a human tag? The 2 that I can think of are the father and son combo of Varian and Anduin. Varian would actually be able to increase the speed on all of the individual pirates that you did make into a human, which those mercenaries are a little bit slower anyways and might actually make a human pirate combo really good. And then Anduin Penance would also heal the pirates, or have a chance to heal the pirates, thus giving pirates something that they are currently missing, which is a really good healer, thus allowing you to actually keep your mercenaries alive for a much longer period of time. Now, these combinations wouldn't actually even be the best possible outcome of adding additional tag to all the pirates. The best outcome would probably be to patches. Patches would be incredibly good with Gul'dan if the pirates that you summon off of Captain actually had the demon tag on it also. I wouldn't see a world where they added a demon tag to patches without adding a demon tag to those pirates in particular too, but in theory this could become a really powerful combo if you did manage to actually get it off with both of these mercenaries on the same field. And while I do think this is a very funny combo that you could actually pull off, I do think Gul'dan as a mercenary is a little bit too slow and a little bit too bad to actually make this combo very meta relevant, as you do have a lot of other better ways to scale up your fail damage within a fail based team. This would just add additional possibilities, and honestly that's my goal with this video, is trying to figure out ways that we could actually benefit from a dual class mercenary within the game mode. And while the pirates are an example of trying to future-proof a bunch of mercenaries, the next group of mercenaries fall under the category of trying to make them a lot better than they currently are. This being the 2 half-orc mercenaries, which is Rexar and Grona Half-Orcan. And while mercenaries that have the ogre tag don't currently exist in the game mode, it is a race that is very common in the Warcraft universe, so there is going to probably be ogres eventually in mercenaries, if I had to guess. The orc tag is what matters the most among both of these mercenaries, as we don't have many Draenei either. If you put the orc tag instead of having a half orc and tag, things like mobilizing strike would actually be a lot better. It also allows Garona's third ability to be a lot better than it normally is currently, as it would serve a way to buffer up whenever you get mobilizing strike off of that ability or any other ability that affects only orcs, since half orcs for some weird reason aren't considered full orcs when it comes to mercenaries. And while I do think this is probably the end of the very reasonable changes, I am going to go over some hopes and dreams that may or may not ever happen when it comes to the game mode. The first one is going to be to Dralian, who currently has no tag, and I really hate the fact that he has no tag. I know angels don't exist in the Warcraft universe. The closest you're going to get is the Kyrians. However, I do think it is a little bit odd that we have seen 2 Diablo mercenaries at this point, even though Hearthstone is historically a Warcraft-based game. But if I had a nickel for every time a Diablo character was added to Mercenaries, I'd have 2 nickels, which is a little bit strange that we've had it happen twice, so I wouldn't be shocked if we saw some additional ones once Diablo 4 actually comes out. Hell, Gruul even has a tag, even though he'll probably be the only Gron-based mercenary that we'll ever see in the entire game mode, or maybe even the only Gron character that we'll see in the entire history of Hearthstone as a card. It's a race that isn't really used that often within the Warcraft universe, and I'd be very much shocked to see one in the nearby future. So why not just give Dralian a angel tag just to say he has some type of tag? I know it doesn't really affect his overall playability, but it just helps my OCD a little bit. So the next group of mercenaries that I'm going to talk about are going to be the Cloud Serpents, who in the Warcraft lore are actually dragons, even though they have a dragon tag here. I'm assuming they tried to make it a little bit more consistent because they do look like dragons, but Cloud Serpents, when it comes to the Warcraft lore, aren't considered true dragons, and they're considered part of the beast family, which is why they were tameable by hunters and aren't related to the main 5 dragon aspects. And while at this point I think changing them to just be a beast would be a mistake, I do think adding a beast tag wouldn't really hurt too much, just adding a bit of variety that you could use these both in. Now for the last group of mercenaries, I'm only going to show 3 of these mercenaries, but there's technically 4. These being the characters that are actually dragons but in humanoid disguise: Chromie, Rathian, Kazakis, and the one that's missing is Reno. And while I don't think these changes will probably ever see the light of day, I do think it is a little bit of an interesting theory craft if we did see the dragon tag added to these 4 mercenaries. Chromie would be a little bit more playable in cases where you wanted to run a bunch of dragons. Same thing could be said about Rathian. Kazakis already does see some play in some builds that do use a bunch of dragons. This could serve as a buff to the Arcane Dragon team and serve as an additional body for Longshin's Battlecry equipment. Though mercenaries like Chromie and Rathian don't see much play on their own, Chromie is probably the closest to be playable out of these 4 type of mercenaries outside of Kazakis, while Rathian doesn't see play at all because he has some weird synergy with Fel, but he's a dragon, so he doesn't fit anywhere else. If we allowed him to actually start as a dragon, then we could target him with Sinestra and thus protect him, so you could actually go into your Fel-based ability when he does turn into a full-fledged dragon. Now, do I think that's going to increase his playability by a lot? No. He's still a really cool mercenary that I am really sad by the fact that he's never really been too playable over the course of his existence in Mercenaries, but I do think doing something like this would be a step in the right direction. It also could serve as a way to diversify some of the cosmetics for these individual characters, where they don't get to show off their dragon forms because they are always stuck in their humanoid base appearances and the portraits. Anyways, I think we'll probably see dual type mercenaries in the nearby future when it comes to this game mode, whenever the next patch actually does drop. I figured while we're waiting around for new mercenary content, this would be a type of a video that I could easily do and talk about some of the mercenaries that would get a huge benefit of actually getting a second tag on them. While I did have some really crazy ideas for some of the characters that I ended up scrapping, let me know down below if there's any characters you believe that should get an additional tag that I missed in the current mercenary lineup. And like always, if you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, subscribe. Until next time, bye bye.